Well, hello there. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa, Mesa. My name is Brian Perez, and if you're listening to this program on Monday on the radio, we are not live today, so don't call us, but write down our phone number, have it handy for tomorrow when we will be live again. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you see the number there on the bottom of your screen on Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. You guys can call us until 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern at, the number there on the bottom of your screen. And answering your questions today, Brian Brodersen from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Bobby Conway from Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Not joining us today is Phil Metzger. On the count of three, say aw. 1, 2, 3. Aw.
Aw.
We're supposed to do it at the same time, guys. Oh, well.
Where's Phil?
He didn't tell me. He just said he...
Lester Holt or...
Yeah.
Some big...
Yeah, that's right.
Some other big name called him and...
Yeah.
Except this time I think he's filling in for Lester Holt. He's like the big broadcast news announcer now. So, yeah. He's hit the big time. All right. So give us a call. We'd love to speak with you guys. And if you're on hold right now, we'll get to you as quick as we can because we've got a lot of calls that were held over from Thursday. So we're going to start with Lane in Kentucky. Hi there, Lane. How are you listening to the program today?
How am I listening? I'm listening to my phone right now.
Okay, so with the KWVE app?
No, I'm talking to you on the phone.
Okay. No, I just mean, how do you know about the program? That's what I mean.
Oh, sorry. I found you on YouTube.
Got it. Cool. So a YouTube viewer named Lane in Kentucky watching us and now calling in on the program. How can we help you, Lane?
Well, so I am 23 years old, so kind of new to adulthood here, and so that's bringing a lot of questions about. I think God is calling me to apologetics professionally, like as a vocation. And I was wondering if I could get some advice on just how to go through with that.
Okay, and what's the reason so you just feel that the Lord is calling you to doing it?
Yes.
Okay, Bobby, what would you say to Lane?
Well, given your age, Lane, I would say that's wonderful because you have, a lot of years ahead of you, Lord willing, to do some preparation. I think my recommendation is, if you're going to be, an apologist, I think it's really important that you get a good Bible foundation and learn what the Word of God says. Because what is an apologist? They're a defender of the Christian faith. And what is the Christian faith? Believers who, hold to the authority of Scripture. So you want to know what you're defending, and you're defending God's Word. And so I would say get a good education as it relates to Bible. I also think that you would be greatly helped if you're going to go into the realm of apologetics to do some coursework in philosophy, understanding logic so that you can really see through broken arguments. Logic will help you to really see and contradictions. You'll hear contradictions. It's almost like they say when you go to Israel, it's like you read the Bible in black and white, you go to Israel, it's in color. Well, in a lot of ways, after learning logic, it's kind of like you listen to words in color where before it was in black and white. You can just see a flawed argumentation. So why is that important? Because as an apologist, you're wanting to expose bad arguments, develop good arguments, but you don't want to be argumentative, obviously. I also think that if you're inclined toward this, making sure that your sanctification in Christ is really one that's growing in Christ-likeness, because you don't want to go and get a bunch of information and head knowledge and do apologetics and be ineffective. So, focusing on just Christian sanctification. Now, where can you do this? It depends if you wanted to do it online. You're in Kentucky, so there's Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary is one school that I know is there in Louisville that does some stuff in apologetics. But I would really look for the right tone, and this is where I think Biola captures it well. And so if you were to go to get a Bible college foundation and then maybe do like a master's in philosophy or a master's in apologetics and take some philosophy electives, I think that will help you really well. I think the last thing is I would be thinking as a pragmatician as you do this, and not just somebody who is thinking theoretical, be thinking about how apologetics needs to be presented in the local church. There's so much apologetics in the world of academia, but what we need is an emergence of young leaders that are churchmen who are apologetically trained. And so as you take these courses, think about what it would look like to contextualize the arguments to lay people and to create curriculums for lay people so that they can if you go to school, when you write a paper, make all of your papers reproducible. Don't just write a paper to stick in the drawer. Write a paper that can have an opportunity for you to teach it so that way you can spread your learning and disciple people. Lastly, as it relates to apologetics, because of your age, typically I would say if you're having a full-time career in apologetics, you might be thinking of a specialist. So a lot of apologists are specialists. William Lane Craig's focuses on the resurrection of Christ and the cosmological argument. You'll have people that really find a niche. David Wood focuses on reaching Muslims. But because you're young, focus on general apologetics. Get a broad appetite there. Get your feet wet. And then if you're going to keep advancing all the way through doctoral work, then figure out which niche you want to go into, but find a niche that's going to have relevance to the culture versus just sometimes I go to these evangelical theological societies and I read these papers and they just seem so irrelevant. And that's one of my problems with academics at times. I'm like, come on, we need to get with it. So don't lose yourself and study so much that you lose sight of the culture.
What do you think, Lane?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Another thing I think I'm really thinking about is how to pursue the right training, because I mean there's the there's the sort of dilemma where there's a lot of formal training out there, like you said, Southern Baptist in Louisville. That's a great option. There's also a lot of more affordable or cheaper options as well. And I often debate with myself, is it wiser to go with a formal training, or is there enough informal resources that I can consult, like the various YouTube channels, books, podcasts, all that.
Yeah, if you're going to be a YouTuber, like my friend John McCrae with What Do You Meme, or Mike Winger, he has this thing. If you're going to be a YouTuber, Elisa Childers with Progressive Christianity, if you're going to be a YouTuber, you can go ahead and become an expert on a niche. So if there's a particular thing you're passionate about, you can become a niche person and do YouTube. And it's not necessary, as it's been proven, that there are people who are being really effective in this way. But if you want to be a pastor, or if you want to be a professor, then you might want to look at the other route. Brian, do you have any thoughts as it relates to a young budding apologist?
Yeah, I think that as you mentioned, there's plenty of great stuff that's available, books and podcasts and YouTube and so forth. So there's plenty of stuff out there. I mean, when I was young, and it was basically books and school. Those were the options that you had. There's so many other options today. So I would just say, I think if you haven't fully decided at this point that you want to step into the academic thing, then just utilize the good material that's available. I know some guys who are fantastic apologists, and they've never stepped foot in an academic institution, but they have really They've got a good sharp mind. They got good memory. They can articulate well. They've really digested, the different ideas and views and facts and philosophies and so forth. And so I don't think you need to go the academic route, like Bobby said, unless you're thinking in terms of I want to be a professor at a university level or whatever, or even pastorally. I don't think you necessarily need to pursue the academic thing, but
or being on a radio program.
It can be helpful, or being on a radio program. Yeah, that might. Yeah,
Bobby.
Brian, I had a question for you, but you kind of answered it. I mean, here you are, you're doing your master's degree, and God blessed you with a very fruitful ministry, and lots of Calvary Chapel people through the years without education, formally. Greg Laurie, and God has used people in amazing ways, and we'd be a fool to not see that. I do wonder what your thoughts are as it relates to that. Like, given where the culture's at now, would you look at that differently now that you have gone through kind of a master's program, or what would you say?
Yeah, I probably would look at it a little bit differently because of the cultural situation. And the one thing that I've found about the seminary education that I think is really, really helpful is that it broadens your perspective on lots and lots of things, where you tend to, depending on the tribe you're part of, the denomination maybe or whatever, you tend to kind of just get stuck in that world, and you see everything through that lens, and it can be a good lens, but it's limited in ways. So I think you get a good, strong, biblically conservative academic approach to things, and it just automatically broadens your perspective, your understanding. And I think in the world that we live in today, with so many diverse things that we are challenged by and we face, I think that we need that kind of broadness. So I would never say, because I didn't go this route, nor did many people that I know, I would never say you need to go get a seminary education to be a pastor. I don't think you do. But at a certain stage in life, it could be helpful for you. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I was having this talk this morning with my son. He's 21. And Brian, he's spent some time at Calvary Chapel, Bible College. But he kind of resists the formal approach.
Yeah.
And, he'll look at me. He's like, but Dad, you can kind of train me. And I said, but, son, I can help you. But the reality is you'll be limited if it's just by me. Mm-hmm. And because there's other voices that we all need to hear from in life, in the teaching process. And I said, my biggest fear, and I was trying to really push into him to consider going a formal route. I said, I don't think you have to have that. And I said, but in today's culture, I said, it just cards on the table. I mean, the reason I even went and did a PhD at a secular university, one of my main motivations is I knew I was involved in professional apologetic work, and I did it because I did not want to lose a particular audience that could just say, oh, he's only been grown in evangelical schools. So even going that secular route for me, I just wanted to go through what that experience to see what people are up against. And, so I don't think that's everybody's experience, but I told my son, as we were talking, I said, probably one of the best things that I got out of the formal is it disciplines you to study things that you would never do on your own, because you're going to spend time migrating toward what interests you, what excites you. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have put charts together, diagrams, written long papers, did the Greek and the Hebrew. I wouldn't have just did that if I was on a self-made path.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. That's what I mean by broadening. It forces you to do things that you wouldn't do those things. And, when I look at my educational experience, I think I've been in a bunch of classes and read books and written papers on stuff I would have never even thought about it before, let alone wanted to write a paper on it. So it's forced me.
And you didn't like writing papers always, right?
No, and I still don't. And but it's forced me to but in a good way. It's been good because I needed that, and it's provided the opportunity for that to happen. And I think that's one of the virtues of school. It does provide an opportunity for you. I've read so many books in my life, I can't even begin to imagine, what the count is. But there's a difference when you're able to read a book and you're able to sit with somebody who maybe wrote the book or somebody who knows the content of the book that you can converse with. That's an amazing thing. And that is the one thing that always was in the back of my mind when I thought about higher education. I thought, I would like to have that experience. It just took me a while to finally decide to do it.
Lane,
glad you did.
Lane, thanks for calling us from Kentucky today. Keep watching us on YouTube. God bless you, brother. This is Pastor's Perspective. Brian Perez here with Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway. Let's talk to Dave in California. Now, on Thursday's program, I think we only had like 2 topics of discussion on Thursday's program. Homosexuality was one of them, and speaking in tongues was the other. So Dave's question is about speaking in tongues. Hey there. Thanks for calling us, Dave.
Hey, guys. Hey, Brian. Thank you, guys, and Bobby. Thank you, guys, for taking your time, and thank you for walking us through how to be a good Christian and being that salt and light in a difficult world right now. My question is, and I've heard you guys talk about speaking in tongue, and what I'm looking at, I've never heard it. And Brian, I'd love to hear you talk, and do it. But I know there's rules. And
Come on, Brian.
Do it. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
do it now. On the count of 3.
And Brian, you interpret.
And I'll interpret, sure.
I would like to find, is there a way I could hear it, maybe through YouTube, or get some information?
Oh, man.
Just so I could hear what it sounds like. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, is there a resource or a way, something like that?
Well, I think that what you're gonna find is that it's not the same all the way across the board. There's going to be diversity in what that sounds like. I can't, and this is a theological perspective. I don't know, because I can't. I don't know that the gift of tongues is such that you can just simply turn it on and turn it off whenever you feel like it. Maybe it is for some people. It's not for me. So for me, it is a very specific moving of the Spirit on me at points in time where generally it would be in a prayer time, but where the Spirit prompts me to move in that direction, and then I go in that direction. Now, I know some people that will say, oh, you want me to speak in tongues? Okay, boom, here I go. Whether that's actually tongues, I don't know. Because again, theologically, I'm not convinced. Just like any of the other gifts that are listed in the list there in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, I'm not convinced that anyone has them in their permanent possession in such a way that they can exercise them at will. If you look at all of those other things there, none of them work that way. So you can't, you might call up and say, hey, Brian, I need a prophetic word. Could you prophesy over me? No, I cannot. Brian, I need healing. Could you heal me right now? No, I cannot heal you. I need a word of knowledge. Can you give me a word of knowledge? No, I can't. But I have done all of those things. But it wasn't because I willed it. It was because God prompted and provided the gifting at the time. So when I think about it like that, and then I think of tongues, so how does tongues work then? Does tongues work in a similar way to that? And the answer is I don't really know. But I would say, Dave, go to a church that believes in the present day manifestation of the gifts of the Spirit, but is not over the top with wild, crazy, charismatic type stuff, and put yourself in a prayer meeting or something like that where tongues are occurring, and that's where you can have that experience.
Don't say crazy, Brian. You're going to trigger people again.
Right.
Well, no, you didn't trigger people last time. It was Bobby. This time it'll be you.
Yeah.
Does this help you, Dave?
Yes, it did. The thing is, I didn't want to jump on YouTube or the internet to find that answer because I think you could go down a wrong track on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't look for tongues on the internet or on YouTube.
Yeah, you probably, yeah.
I would go to a church that's a balanced church that believes in the fullness of the gifts of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Dave.
Awesome. Take care.
Thanks
Okay.
for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. Bobby Conway and Brian Brodersen answering your questions. We are now going to go to Laura in California. What's on your mind, Laura?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I have a question about...
Hold on. Are you on speakerphone, Laura?
Yeah, I am.
Is there a way you can not be on speakerphone so that we can hear you a little bit better?
Yeah, let me see if I can take it off without... that was the airplane flying over.
Oh, airplane. You're there in San Diego, so I guess they were flying over there.
Right, yeah.
All right.
Terrytown. I'm a veteran, by the way, anyway, too. So,
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Welcome. My question is, I need some advice on whether to mention, well, let me see how to articulate this question. I'm having trouble talking to someone about her engagement to this young man who he says he's a Christian, and I have no doubt, I have no reason not to believe that. He was raised Catholic, and she's a Christian, and there are some things that he doesn't believe that the Bible says. And I'm just concerned. Those are, for me, they're red flags. I don't know if they should be. I need some advice on how to, well, I've already mentioned those to her, but she says I'm going to draw the line in the sand to what I want to accept or not. And, she's very important to me, so I'm very concerned about that relationship, and I've been definitely praying for God to give her wisdom.
Yeah, what are some of the issues that he doesn't believe?
One of the things that came up was sex before marriage, which is in the Bible. Another thing that I don't know if he believes or not, but he curses. And then she'll put him on speakerphone, and then she'll click it off when he starts to curse. And, of course, the Bible says to let no profane language proceed out of your mouth. And, if that's just something that he's struggling with, I can understand that because we all struggle with it. But if it's something that is plain and in the Bible, and then you're willing to work towards to try and not do those things, I can understand that too. But I just don't know. I've got this feeling that something is just, whether they're not ready, he's not ready or something. And I don't know what kind of, should I just not say anything to her anymore, or just should I share some more scriptures, or just leave it alone and,
Okay.
let God work it out.
Bobby, what would you say to Laura?
Yeah, this is difficult, and we see a lot of people go toward marriage, and we can have checks. Obviously, if the person thinks that it's okay to have sex before marriage, then there's probably several other moral issues that he would object to that the Bible teaches as well. And what is Christian sanctification? It's to become like Jesus. And what are we becoming like? Well, the one who fulfilled the moral law that we all broke. And so being a Christian means that we're pursuing a person named Jesus who's holy, who modeled a virtuous life. And if we deny that there are important aspects to things like sexual virtues, the virtues in how we speak, then that's problematic. So if he's going to hold that, what that tells you then is he is going to be stuck becoming like Christ. So if the purpose of living is to become like Jesus as Christians, if he's rejecting some of these moral things, and the purpose of Jesus coming was to forgive us for our moral failures by fulfilling the moral law so that we could become like him in holiness, well, if you deny these types of things, then you're already learning at the outset that here's a person, because of what they're denying, that she's going to marry a person that's not going to become more like Christ in several virtuous areas. And so that is problematic. And that's why we want somebody that would believe in the Word of God that we're marrying, because, and especially like looking at the person of Jesus, because he's our moral exemplar and he's who we're going to pursue together in marriage. And that means that over time, hopefully we become more holy, more like Christ. When we say Christ-like, well, what was Christ like? He was holy. He was without sin. So hopefully the longer we walk with him, our thoughts are becoming more pure, our words are becoming more pure, our motivations are becoming more pure, our actions are becoming more pure. But at the outset, if you're dating somebody and they're already denying these virtues that Christ upholds, well, she's going to enter into a relationship, if she disagrees with him, where she is going to get quickly ahead in her sanctification, or she's going to be brought down. So I think it is problematic as well. I would say that you could lovingly just say, hey, this is kind of my one conversation I want to have with you. I have the concern for these reasons. I don't want it to hurt us relationally. I'm going to love you and stand by you no matter what. But I just know it's a big decision, and I want to make sure you know what you're getting into.
Laura, what do you think of what Bobby just said?
I think that's good. And like I said, I have mentioned that it was a concern of mine too. So maybe I should just stop there then, because I don't want it to hurt our relationship for sure.
Any thoughts from you, Brian?
Yeah.
No, that was good.
Yep. Laura, thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. Brian Perez here with Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway. We're not live on this Monday afternoon if you're listening on the radio, but we will be live tomorrow. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube on Thursday afternoon, you guys can call us using the number there on the bottom of your screen. Let's go to Wanda in California. How can we help you, Wanda?
Yes. Hi, pastors. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
I kind of have a multi-layered question. I was speaking to a young man who threw out a lot of questions to me, and I was like, well, I don't know.
Tell him to call. Tell him to call us himself.
I did, and he won't. I challenged him, and I said, you don't want to call because you don't want to know. So anyway, here's the questions real quick. So who were the fallen angels? Who were their offsprings? Where did they land? How did the Lord mark them? And then he said that the earth was born of the woman's uterus. And somewhere in there, he talked about Nan, N-A-N, I think. And I was like, okay. I'm really interested to see what the answers are. I did not want to engage him because I felt like it was speaking to the wind.
Yeah. Sounds like he's done a deep dive into the internet.
Yeah.
And come up with all kinds of junk on the bottom.
Yeah.
There aren't really any answers to any of those questions. The first couple, we don't know the answer to those questions. There is the idea that from Genesis chapter 6, there is the belief among some people that there was at some point a cohabitation between fallen spiritual beings and human beings, and that could be possible, but it's debated among Christians and scholars. So, but then when you get into these other things that just have there's no biblical connection to any of that. It just sounds like he's just picking up weird stuff from the internet.
All right. Any thoughts from you, Bobby, before we take our break?
Nope.
All right. Wanda, thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. We've got to take a break now. We'll be back with more of your questions. If you're on hold right now, stay on hold. We'll get to you when we can. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you guys can call us using the number there on the bottom of your screen. Unless you're like that guy that Wanda was talking about that doesn't really want the answers. That's why he won't call. But you really want answers. I know you do. So you can call us tomorrow when we are live once again here on Pastor's Perspective. Time for a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hang on. We're back on Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. My name is Brian Perez, and if you're listening to this program on Monday afternoon on the radio, it is not live, so don't call us with your questions. But if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube on Thursday afternoon, you can call us. We've got an open line right now. The number's there on the bottom of your screen. Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway are answering your questions today, and let's now go to Melinda in Montana. Thanks for calling us today, Melinda. How are you listening to Pastor's Perspective?
I'm doing well. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Thanks.
Good.
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, I caught part of Thursday's program, and if you answer this question, I ask for forgiveness. But my question has to do with talking to the LGBTQ community, and in particular when, like, somebody says that they're a man trapped in a woman's body or vice versa. How do we speak to them, and what scriptures can we give? And the reason I ask is the argument that gets put before me often is that the Bible was written long ago and they didn't have these issues. And I don't believe that. I think that there's been one truth forever and that all news is old news, happening to new people. So what scripture could you point me to, or what language would you use when speaking with these people?
Bobby, what would you say to Melinda?
Well, I would say the immediate language that I would want to use would be one where I'm showing compassion and sympathy for what a person must feel to experience gender dysphoria. Now, on the one hand, you have a culture that we live in that tells us there is no difference between man and women, but this is an interesting thought, right? You have transvestites who feel like they need to have a sex change to show that their inside matches their outside, so to speak. So in other words, if we really believe there's no difference between a male and a female, it would seem like that would be the solution for the person struggling with gender dysphoria. Why do you need to go through a sex change to reflect something if you don't believe there's a difference? And I think that is an interesting thought. But I would say validating that we can't imagine what it would be like. But here's an approach, and I'm thinking about it right now. It's this. What if you were to say something like, in the book of Deuteronomy, the Bible does say that cross-dressing is prohibited. It says in verse 5, a woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. Right? Now, again, this is language that God uses that is not only of cross-dressing. There's lots of things that are considered an abomination to the Lord, right? It's not right in God's eyes. Now, if God would say that cross-dressing is wrong, well, then if you were to have a sex change, how much more wrong would that be? If the Bible prohibits cross-dressing, then the Bible would certainly prohibit messing with the anatomy. Now, here's something I would say. Gender is not something that we just decide we want. It's assigned at birth. In fact, we can't say that I feel like I'm Korean. And you can go look the pictures up. There's somebody who has went through, I think, 11 surgeries so that he could look Korean. And he wanted to look like one of the band members in the Korean band in South Korea. And he said, now I finally feel like my image reflects who I really am. Well, just because he went through surgeries to look Korean doesn't make him Korean, okay? And a sex change is never going to change somebody's chromosomal structure. XX isn't going to become XY, and XY isn't going to become XX. So the sex change isn't going to do that. And so I think it's important that we recognize that, man, we're sorry for this. We can't imagine it. Now, there's really only about 5 people out of 1,000 that will struggle with this condition. There's more females struggling with this today than it used to be. And the last thing that I would say as it relates to the sex change, I mean, our body's a temple, right? And, mutilating the temple for this wouldn't be God's ideal. But I do think we have to then figure out as a church, it's bigger than just that. How are we as the church going to help people then with gender dysphoria to find some integration? Like, Exodus International tried to tell people to go through conversion therapy, and that didn't help. So if this is anything like that, we're going to have to figure out how to walk with people who struggle from gender dysphoria. And even if they go through a sex change, how are we going to still show the love of Jesus? That's going to be really important as well. So these are just tough topics that we are up against, no doubt.
Bobby, by the way, it's not 11 surgeries, it's 18 surgeries that this person has had.
Okay, my math was off. 18
either that
surgeries?
Or they've had 7 more surgeries since you last wrote about it. Brian, any thoughts from you?
So.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think we have to recognize too, gender dysphoria is a real thing, but it is very limited in who it affects. So, I mean, we cannot assume that everyone who is looking to become transgender or considers themselves transgender is experiencing gender dysphoria. Some are. And it's a psychological disorder that needs to be compassionately treated. But what we're living in is a time when transgenderism is a fad. It is the cool thing to do now.
That's so true, Brian.
And that's why it has so radically spread so rapidly. I mean, just in a matter of 3 or 4 years, the numbers of people who are identifying as transgender has gone completely through the roof. There's never been anything like it in human history. And so it's a social meme that is infecting and And like you said, Bobby, it's infecting girls. Crazy enough, young women. We see mostly, because of the sports world and thing, we mostly see guys who are now, identifying as women, trans women as they're called. But the problem is much more acute among young girls than it is even among guys. So it's just part of the cultural insanity that we are in the midst of. And the whole identity thing, when you are not understanding yourself in the context of created by God and loved by God, you're just open. You're open to anything and everything, especially in a society where the big thing now is to have an identity and a group of people that you connect with.
Bobby Conway?
Yeah, the only thing where I would understand and be sympathetic to somebody undergoing a sex change, so to speak, would be in an intersex condition. It's very, very rare where somebody is born with both male and female anatomical parts, reproductive parts. And in that situation, if somebody, you have a couple options. You could say, we want to allow for this person's anatomy to be in alignment with their chromosomal structure. That would be the safer side. Because, can you imagine if you had both sets of male and female, genitals? That would be understandable why somebody would say, let's limit this. In that situation where somebody goes through that, let's say they want to have their sex change, but it's not to mirror their chromosomal structure. That will bring up another ethical question that you would have to think through, where I don't think ethically as Christians we would even remotely have a problem with somebody removing one set in order to match their chromosomal structure. The question would then be, is there an ethical discussion if somebody says, well, I want it to mirror what I feel, not what my chromosomal structure is? And that would be just an interesting conversation piece. But I don't think people are going to die on that hill. That's just a different thing right there, I think.
Yeah, and I do think this is, I feel about this subject. I feel like the trans activists have jumped onto the intersex thing and pulled it into their world and use it as part of their apologetic. But intersex people historically have not identified with the trans community. That has not been the case.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think it's just important
really
to
good.
remember that. It's been sort of hijacked by the trans activist.
It's like back alley abortions, right, Brian? Like it's like for the limited amount of that, people are going to jump on that. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that out because, so you're saying there's people that can have maybe this intersex condition, but it's not necessarily gender dysphoria. It's just removing one part.
Yeah, and it's a rare condition. It's a physical condition more than anything. And most of the time it's dealt with early on. And so, but like what I'm saying is the trans activist, and I'm speaking of the activist, I see a difference between an activist and a victim of gender dysphoria, say, for example.
Sure.
They're looking for anything to bolster their case or to support their ideas or to promote their agenda. And so I feel like they've just latched onto that. And let's not forget, the trans community, the activists, they're ruthless and they're violent. And, you just look at J.K. Rowling, for example, who has been very outspoken against transgenderism. These activists are threatening to, murder her, mutilate her. It's brutal stuff. And the thing that always fascinates me is that this is driven by violent men. That's what this is driven by. This whole trans thing is driven. It's not driven by women, really. It's really more driven by men. And when you come to the sports thing, this is where you see it. These poor girls are subjected to not only having to compete with biological males, but having to be in the dressing room with biological males who identify as women but haven't even had a sex change. So, I mean, this is insanity. And the fact that there are men that are driving this, and there are, they drive it through intimidation and through power plays. And, we're talking in the culture about power and how corrupt power is, and we don't want people to have that kind of power. And then we see it happening right before our eyes in the trans activist.
Yep.
That's good.
Good point. Melinda, does this help you?
Yes, and the reason I ask is I coach women that have been abused as children.
Oh, gosh.
And the majority, well, not the majority, but a lot of them, just like you were saying, they feel it's that they've identified with a different sex than what they were born with.
Yeah.
And I really believe that has to do more with the psyche and with what they've gone through than it is with what they're actually feeling.
Yeah.
And then I was going to ask you, when are we going to have our Come to Jesus month?
Come to Jesus month.
That's the other 11 months of the year.
Yeah.
But we mentioned in the Thursday program a podcast that Bobby and I both enjoy by a guy named John Dixon, an Australian, and it's called Undeceptions. And Bobby mentioned that John recently did an episode on transgender, and Mark Yarhouse, who's an expert in that arena, and that could probably be, Bobby, you heard it. I mean, you can tell her it was you thought it was very helpful.
Yeah, it was the tone, and that's what's so important. I mean, I really do feel like our tone is going to be something that really matters in this culture. I mean, the truth is like, if we could just have a better tone toward each other with whatever people believe, you can respect people having different viewpoints and convictions, but there's no reason to be harsh with one another. And these are people made in God's image, and we need to find a way to lovingly present the truth to them, especially in this kind of culture.
And if you want to listen to that podcast that Bobby was talking about, it's called Transgender. The name of the program is Undeceptions. You can go to undeceptions.com and look for that episode called Transgender.
So this is just a quick conversation with Bobby. So Undeceptions, that's John Dixon's podcast. I've always wondered, where did he come up with this title for this podcast? And you know what I found out this week? C.S. Lewis wrote a book years ago called Undeceptions. So I'm sure that John Dixon snagged that from Lewis.
Yeah, he probably did. It's a great title, though, isn't it? Helping people get undeceived.
Undeceived, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go from Montana to Maryland. Here is Janet. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, Janet.
Well, good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi there.
I have a question.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, I wanted to get into a Bible study, and so I was looking up on YouTube of different things, and I just couldn't really find anything. So I thought I would call you gentlemen, and since you guys know what you're talking about,
sometimes
to where you could guide me into finding one that's online. I don't know if I can say this over the phone, but there's this one minister, and his name's Mark Correll, and he has beautiful stories and whatever. But I don't know where to go. Could you tell me where I should start? Do I start at the New Testament or the Old Testament?
Brian, what would you say to Janet?
So she's looking for an online Bible study.
Janet, before I go back to you, make sure your radio is off or your computer, whatever it is that you're listening to us on. I think I'm hearing us coming back to us a few seconds later in delay. So, Janet, you're looking for an online Bible study. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would recommend probably starting in the New Testament and make your way through. I mean, we have a number of online teachings through various books of the Bible that you could access if you wanted to do something like that. It's not videoed; it's audio teachings, and you could select various books and go through them individually. There's Through the Bible Radio with J. Vernon McGee. You can go through the entire Bible with him. They now have an app, I think, that you can just access their all of their programs through that. So I don't know, Bobby, maybe you know something online Bible study that I'm not aware of that you could recommend.
Yeah, I mean, the only stuff that I don't do those, so I'm aware of Right Now Media and YouVersion. Mm-hmm. I've done video studies for YouVersion and Right Now Media, but and I know that they've got a lot of other studies on there that could be great. Like, what's the one study? They did a really good job through the Bible, and they just take like each book of the Bible, and they talk about the Bible, and it's an animated form.
Yeah, that's the Bible, the Bible Project.
Right. Yes.
The Bible Project. Yeah, that could be something very helpful.
The Bible
as well.
Project's fantastic.
I thought that was good.
But it's not. It's not so much. The Bible Project isn't so much a Bible study or a devotional type of thing. It's more informational. It's great information and it's great animation, but
Now, you mentioned animation, so some adults might think, well, that's probably too little kiddish.
Yeah, it's not. It's not kiddish. It's the animation is really, it's very,
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, anybody's gonna enjoy the animation.
Okay, BibleProject.com is where you can find out more about that. Janet, thanks for your phone call. Let's go to Crystalline in California. How can we help you?
Hi, I just had a question.
Whoa, hold on. Your phone is breaking up. I don't know what it is, if you're on Bluetooth or what the problem might be. Let's try again. Are you there still? Oh, man, you've got really bad reception. So we'll go back to you in a little bit. Let's read this question off the screen here, which you told our screener. You just became a mom. Congratulations. And the church you attend does not allow women to be in leadership. So you want to know what our thoughts are on this, right? Yes, that is what she wants to know. Brian, what do you tell Crystalline? We just have a really bad connection. We can't hear Crystalline. I don't know what the problem is.
Are you there yet, Crystalline? Can you hear us? Or we can't hear
I think she can hear us.
I can hear you. I'm so sorry.
There you go.
There you are. You just came through loud and clear.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, and the connection here is really poor. But yeah, that about sums up what I was hoping to hear about.
So the church you attend doesn't allow women to be in leadership. Leadership is a very broad category. We have all different kinds of roles of leadership. So do you mean by leadership women being the pastor of the church, or what specifically do you mean?
Or elder position in a Presbyterian church.
Right. Okay. Is this a PCA church, a Presbyterian Church of America?
No.
No. Okay. The reason I ask that is because traditionally that would be the PCA position, and the PCUSA would be much more what they would call an egalitarian space, where they would have women ordained.
Is that why they're called
pastors and so-
egalitarians?
Egalitarian, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's for the gals.
It's for the gals, yes.
Oh, man.
So, there's a lot of diversity of opinion on just what women can do. The Bible is clear that women can obviously serve in the church and should serve in many various capacities. Some people think that women can serve all the way up to being the lead pastor of the church. Other people feel like that's where it stops. That would be to go too far to have a woman in a lead role in a church. Some people believe that women can be part of the elder team. Other people would see that, women can serve like an elder but not have the title of elder. So there's a ton of different perspectives out there on this. My own personal conviction is that a woman can do anything that a man can do in a church, with the exception of be the head pastor, head elder of the church.
What do you think, Crystalline?
Okay, and I'm just curious if there's any scripture that brought you to this conclusion.
Yeah. I think, there's a number of things. Number one, if you just think about Jesus and his choosing of those who are going to go out and basically establish his church. He chose 12 men to do that, and he appointed them as apostles. And I think it would have been very, very easy for Jesus to include a couple of women in there if he, thought that was a role that women were going to carry out. So he didn't do that. In what we see in the scriptures is, for example, in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 12, Paul there gives instruction about what women are not to do in regard to teaching and exercising authority over a man. If you keep on reading, you go into the 3rd chapter where he tells you who can hold that position. And he says that if any man desires the office of the overseer, then he gives the qualifications for that. So my understanding of that is that Paul is telling women that their role is not to lead the church. They have a role in ministering in the church, but the role to lead the church is reserved for the man. And so, again, 1 Timothy 2:12, we have a chapter break, but the original document did not have a chapter break. Paul's talking about the same thing all the way through. He's answering the question, who can lead the church? And he makes it clear that it is to be a man.
And that's very interesting that you say that, and we've only got a few seconds left, but Jesus was surrounded by women in his ministry, so he could have picked one of them as the 12. I didn't even think about that.
And they served in all different kinds of capacities, evangelist and all different kinds of things. But you never see them in that specific role of leading the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Part of a leadership team, yes, but not the leader.
All right, we're out of time. And that's too bad because we still had calls on the board. Call us back tomorrow, please. We will be here between 3 and 4 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you guys. Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.